to Open School of Business. Today, I'm very honored to introduce you to CEO and founder of the Busboys and Poets, the legendary Andy Shallal, our very own DMV local. Welcome, Andy, and I'm very excited about our interview today. And I'd like to get you started with how you got started with this great innovative idea back in the day.
Well, like many entrepreneurs, I think the idea starts oftentimes with a need to fill a void. So I thought there was a void, a space there in the marketplace, in restaurants and gathering places for people who want to just come together and have a chat, conversations, and hear some poetry and see some good art and hear some music and kind of be in a chill spot. You're not there just to dine, you're there to experience as well, connect with your neighbors, other people from different parts of the world, the country, whatever. And I didn't see a space like that. There were many parts of that space. There was places where you can go gather for those purposes. There were places where you can go eat. Where there are places, but they weren't combined together. And of course, adding a bookstore made it even that much more exciting. And I wanted to have that kind of energy and excitement that a bookstore brings as well. People that are informed, that are curious, that want to learn about other people, other parts of the world, and it was what I wanted, really, for me. And I think that's oftentimes how an entrepreneurial idea starts: is what is it that's missing that you would like to see in your community, in your neighborhood, in your in the space that you work in.
Right. And I'm very excited that in the days where bookshops are actually closing, you're opening more locations. And
Yeah.
I'm happy to see that one in Columbia, Maryland, where I
Yes.
know a lot of people in the community. So everyone is very happy about that one.
Yes.
And yeah, I know because I listened to one of your talks at the DC Startup Week on how you were in the hospitality business already, but you had your own struggles there, and that kind of gave you the motivation to go your own path and open this new business. So when you decided that, how difficult it was, and what it took, how much effort it took you to um, gather up everything you have and start a new business.
Well, I mean, I think starting a new business, there are different ways that people get started. Sometimes you're so frustrated in what you're doing that you feel like you just need to get a break and break away from it. And sometimes you see things that are being done and you say, I could do this better, and try to think of ways that you can actually break away and make it happen. For me, I was working at a food and beverage manager at the Shoreham Hotel, Omni Hotels, a great place, and I was turned down for an opportunity to advance. And I thought, it's very hard for me to compete sometimes because I think for many people, especially immigrants or people that are not necessarily native born Americans and white, frankly, there's more challenges, and they oftentimes don't get the front seat. They have to fight for it. And that's why we see so many immigrants and people of color actually having their own businesses, is because oftentimes they see that's the only way they can really advance, that to compete in a racist white supremacist environment isn't necessarily the best option. Things are changing, no doubt, but I think it's still harder for someone of color to be able to advance. And that's why I think many of us do go the route of entrepreneurship and opening up our own places and starting our own businesses. So for me, it was kind of an opportunity, a moment, and sometimes these things may seem terrible at the time, end up to be the best thing that happened to you. For me, it was a good thing that happened, because had I been advanced, I would have been probably still working there. Not that it would be a bad thing, but it probably wouldn't be as exciting as what I'm doing now.
Right. I agree. And we're very happy that you actually did it because Busboys and Poets is a one of a kind of place. And I wonder if that's what you were aspiring to do, anyways, when you were younger. And because I know you went through rigorous education as well. And I'm wondering, how did you make those decisions to enter that particular university and do a degree there?
Well, I think I've always wanted to. I've always been entrepreneurial. So I always say that an entrepreneur isn't somebody that's in their own business necessarily. You could be an entrepreneur and work for other people. It's just a person that finds solutions when there's problems. They don't wait for a template. They create a template. They create their own path. And I think that's what makes an entrepreneur, is someone who's able to take a risk and say, you know what, I see that getting from point A to point B doesn't have to be in this direction. It could be done this way and this way instead. And sure enough, they'll find a better way and a more efficient way to get things done, or a better way to get things done. So for me, it was really kind of, you know, that was the whole idea of entrepreneurship in my mind. That's what it was all about. The education part and all this is helps you to create some discipline in your life. I think oftentimes, some people think, oh, I don't need an education. You probably don't. Education isn't always necessarily a tool to get you to where you want to be, but it is a process. And that process, sometimes you can learn a lot just from the process of, you know, going to school, being on time, taking tests, setting deadlines, reaching goals, et cetera. These things are very useful tools to have in your toolbox as you go into entrepreneurship. Sometimes people see, well, Bill Gates didn't go to school, or Steve Jobs didn't finish college. I
Mhm.
could do that too. But these people were working 24 hours creating something else. They weren't just hanging out at the bars.
Right,
They
of
weren't just,
course. Yeah.
So I think sometimes people forget that it's not a either or, but sometimes from a distance things look very easy and very simple for certain people, but they're not. There's
Yeah.
always a complex path that got somebody where they are, and
Hmm.
we only see the end result. We don't see
Yeah.
the failures along the way. We don't see the bumps and the getting up. I was talking with my daughter. I said, because she always beating herself up for not doing something or not getting somewhere or something like that. She's a very accomplished young woman, but I said, you know what? At times you have to stop and stop beating up yourself and really start thinking in terms of what you accomplished. I had the opportunity a couple of years ago to go to do Everest Base Camp, that trek that goes to Mount Everest, and
Wow.
it's a very difficult trek, especially I'm 67 now, so for me to be able to do that took a lot, but I take risks, so it was fine. It was something that I wanted to do, and so I started walking. I remember halfway through, I'm thinking like, this is exhausting. This is really tired. I don't know if I can do this. And the Sherpa that was with me, he says, your problem is you always look ahead, thinking about what's ahead. You should turn around once in a while and make an assessment of what you've accomplished and how far you've come. And sure enough, within minutes, seriously, like sometimes just a light bulb goes off, it changed everything. It changed everything for me.
Right.
I was able to walk a few yards and once in a while turn around and say, boy, I've gone a long way. This is much higher than I was before. And suddenly you feel like,
Uh,
anything is possible.
right. I mean, that is amazing thing to say when you've accomplished so much. And that is why today we're having a lot of questions around how you did it. How was it back in the day? Like what kind of experiences shaped you? And you are lucky enough to be able to, look back and tell us all about these things. But I can relate to your daughter, I guess. We're
Yeah.
always thinking about the future, what is the next thing. And that is how, for entrepreneurs, we're futuristic by default anyways. We
Right.
like
Right.
to think, okay, what could be better,
What's next?
what's next exactly. So I would like to dig in more into your past, like, and celebrate the whole path that you've gone through, and ask you what kind of childhood experiences, in your opinion, shaped your success.
I was always an outsider. I mean, for me, I could never fit into a box. I remember as a kid when we first came to America. Originally from Iraq. Um, my my family came here, and I was 10 years old at that time, and going to middle school. And I remember going to middle school, and people were asking me, "What are you? Are you black? Are you white? Are you other?" And for me, it was a very strange question to ask someone because I did not come from a society that really looked at color that way as America does. And it was a very strange thing to have to constantly fit yourself in a box. You were either this or that, uh, you know, and I could never be this or that. I was always something else. And
Right.
trying to figure out what that other thing really, I never fit in. And I think that's part of it also. I think for entrepreneurs, oftentimes they don't fit in. They don't fit into a neat box. So they figure out their path differently than everybody else. They don't conform to a standard that's been set for them. They try to create their own standards. And I think that's a unique thing that sometimes I think entrepreneurs have that makes them stand out from the rest.
Right. I think it's a challenge, and at the same time, it's a gift that
Yeah.
gets you going and doing such different, unique, wonderful things. And so, what in the beginning, when you gathered up with the idea and you started, what was the biggest challenge for you?
I think for me, it was actually getting enough financing to be able to get the project off the ground, finding the bank that's willing to give me the money to loan me, and then you know being constantly losing sleep over the idea: am I going to be able to make payments? Am I going to be able to make it? Am I putting my family at risk? Because I had a family. I wasn't single and living alone and living in a shack. I was, I had a home, and I had a family, and I had a car payment, and I had children that are getting ready to go to college, and I had all that. So it's a lot, and I think for me that was definitely a big consideration. But I think that is also a motivation. You know what I mean? It's like there is no option to lose. Like you putting everything on the line. You got to put every inch of your body and soul into this project to get it done. So you're
Hmm.
not going to take second, guesses. Some people like when they want to go into business, they sort of keep their job and sort of tip their toe into it and see if it feels right. Now that may work for some people. It didn't work for me. For me, I either have to dive all the way in or I can't do it because
Right.
if you don't dive all the way in, there's always a risk of backing out. There's always that sort of cushion that you can walk back to. And if you don't have a cushion, you're going to go for everything, and I think sometimes it takes everything to get there. So,
Right.
I don't want to go halfway and then pull out and say, it's more comfortable being back here, and then let go of a dream. So for me, it
Right.
was it was an all or nothing. Yeah,
Oh wow, that
yeah,
is, I mean,
yeah,
restaurant business is very capital intensive
yeah,
business. So
yeah, yeah,
that's one of the biggest challenges, and I think is a barrier to enter the market.
yeah.
So what made you think that people would love going to your restaurant and that they would spend their money and you'd be able to make the payment? Like what were the
Well,
things you bet
well,
on,
first
like
of all, first of
different
all,
food, or you already had people, okay, I really want to come and do this poetry nights at your place?
Well, first of all, it's not my first restaurant. I've done restaurants before, so I knew how to run restaurants, and I knew how to what people like. I knew what sells. I knew what the market was hungry for, literally. So for me, was that part was the easy part. The other parts were like the poetry and the books and the lounge and the gathering space and all that. That was just an added bonus. And I thought, if you can have good food and build all this stuff around it, the synergy of that can actually multiply the effect and create a much more exciting environment. And sometimes so I went and did my research. I invited different groups in. I made sure they knew what I was doing, so that it's not just this little secret that I've got in my pocket that I've got to open the door and people are going to see it suddenly. So I wanted to make sure that people were in on it, so that they can become um, the ambassadors to talk about it. So I shared it with a lot of people. I shared the idea. A lot of times, I think also that's really interesting. A lot of entrepreneurs like to hide their ideas, thinking that somebody's going to come and steal it. Now, maybe in some instances, that would be a concern. But in my business, because it's so complicated and so complex with so many different layers, um, just because somebody knows how to grill a hamburger isn't going to make them open Busboys and Poets. For me, it was like I wanted to share everything about the place and vet it so that I can hear from other people's perspective. If I say this doesn't sound very good, or this sounds really great, or why don't you try it this way, or why don't you add this also? So you get all ideas and put them together in a big bowl, and suddenly you start sifting through them. You may not use all of them, but you certainly have a better options in front of you that you can select from and combine and create a space that becomes the space that everybody wants to go to. And I
Hmm.
can't tell you how many people walked into Busboys and Poets and looked around and saw everything and says, "Oh, this is the place I've always dreamed of doing myself." And it's funny because there's nothing mysterious about Busboys and Poets. It's a bookstore, it's a lounge. I mean, there's been bookstores forever, lounges have been around, bars have been around, restaurants have been around, poetry's been around, gathering places have been around. It's the combination that makes it so exciting. So to create that kind of a space was really what it's about. Um,
Right. And you have your heart in it. You have
yeah.
the reason why it's very popular these days. A lot of leadership gurus and authors, they write about find your why, and then they open the business. So you had that going. And I wonder, there are few ways to expand. So you chose to expand yourself. Why not consider franchising?
Well, we've thought about franchising. We've been talking about it a little bit. I think franchising is complicated because for a couple of reasons. One is we're not a typical restaurant where profits are such a level that a franchisee can actually make money and still pay the franchise fees. So
Mhm.
that makes it a little complicated. Number two is that oftentimes things that are franchisable are simpler. You have ice cream, cookies, hamburgers. Uh, we have so many different layers and so many kind of like layers that are hard to describe and hard to assess and hard to quantify. You know, the politics of what we do, the vibe we create, the books we select, all these things are very complicated to put in words sometimes and make it very clear to its franchisee. No, we cannot have Colin Powell come and speak. You know, um, he's dead now, but still, we just there are certain criteria that we've created within our spaces that make sense to what we do, and um, we try to stick with them. And it's not just about making money, but it's also about making money while also uh, you know holding on to a certain standard of what we feel the world should look like.
Right. Yes. So it's been so many years since you opened the first one and then the second one and everything. So how did your vision evolve over the years of either how you should be doing it or things you've added in or even your own views about the politics and how it all works together with the society and the communities?
I think over time, I've been trying to relinquish some of the responsibilities that I have, because a lot of it is very personal. Busboys and Poets is very personal, and I'm trying as much as possible to remove my particular role, so that I can allow others to be able to rise and shine. So that has evolved over time. Um, we've become very employee focused. So trying to figure out what does that look like, while at the same time maintaining profitability and making sure that the employees are happy and making sure our customers are satisfied, etc. A lot of different elements have to come into play, and of course, you have COVID, and that sort of helped to shift many things and have us reassess the way we do business. And coming out of COVID and seeing where that goes, and with the job market the way it is right now, and how complicated it is to get people to do service types of jobs, it's been a constant pivot. Always say for entrepreneurs, pivot is the new normal. You have to know how to constantly be in a shifting mode and be prepared for change, that's going to allow you to survive the ups and downs. We're like the palm trees in the Caribbean. You know, they stay up after a hurricane. But they bend. They bend really a lot.
Yes.
So you have to learn how to become a Caribbean palm tree, in order for you to be able to survive as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I really love that analogy. I think it serves everyone well.
Yeah,
It's just amazing how nature is so wise.
it did,
Um,
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
And the reason why I was asking about how it will evolve because I knew you saw this outlet in business to change society and have sort of impact. And then in 2014, you went for an attempt for a direct impact where you could serve the community that you care so much about. So, what would you like to share about that experience of running for a mayor of Washington, D.C., and how it worked out and what other lessons learned you came up uh, from it?
First of all, I loved running for office. I thought it was one of the most exciting times, and certainly one of the most educational things I've ever done. I learned so much about the city. I learned so much about people. I learned that people are really smart, no matter where they come from, no matter what their education level is. People sense authenticity and sense real and sense, when somebody's trying to pull the wool over their eyes. Um, I learned overall people are very nice, and much, when we read about in the media and all that, it feels like politics are dirty and nasty and all this. And yes, maybe they are, but for the most part, I learned that people are actually very good and very nice, and really uh, take their civic responsibilities very seriously. So that was really cool. Um, Also learned you can make an impact just by running, not without even having to win. You can still make an impact. So that was kind of interesting as well, because I feel like my candidacy, although it was a long shot, um, uh, did have an impact on the race itself. The conversations that we were having, the level of depth of conversations, I thought was useful, and helped to shape some of the policies, some of the ideas that came afterwards with the current administration.
Right. Can you talk about more in detail what kind of impact you have noticed that happened? And can it be improved perhaps if you run again, if you
Well, I
ever
think I think
think about it?
my I launched my campaign from Ward 8, which is the poorest ward in the city, and for a reason, because I think always politics and politicians should always be able to make sure that they take care of the people that are least uh, able to take care of themselves and be able to provide opportunities. And that was the key, is not to give handouts, but to give opportunities for people so that they can do better and they can improve their lives. I think I've seen much of those ideas come to fruition. I think the current mayor has been working very hard to make sure that the housing is number one, because as I went around the city all over the place, people were talking about housing, how expensive it is, how hard it is to be able to survive if you don't have a home, or if you have a home that you cannot afford. That was really a key, I think, for people to stay in the city and to be able to thrive and survive in the city. So that was really important. Taking care of the most vulnerable people, children, education was really important for me, to make sure that we don't just throw money at the system, but actually be able to learn from best practices and implement them throughout the city, to limit the amount of um, people that are leaving the public school system, because I think public schools are key for a democratic society. And I wanted to see, public schools do better, and improve constantly. Oftentimes charter schools are formed because public schools fail, or we
Mhm.
fail them actually. And I thought, you know what, schools don't fail, we fail the schools, and we should be able to work harder to make sure that the people that are living in areas where the schools are not doing so well, to be able to make sure that we look at the root causes for the lack of success for those children. And it's usually families, it's usually their home environment, and tackle that, making sure that we take care of that part of it, and take care of their families, take care of their home lives, in order for them to be able to be to do better in school, and become better citizens, more productive citizens once they get older and go out into the workforce. Making sure that we take care of people that have been imprisoned, that have served time. When they come out from there, make sure that they don't go back, as we see now, where a lot of people do go back. A very high percentage of people come out of prisons, end up going back to prison. Why? Not because they want to, but because when they come out here, there's no opportunities for them to be able to succeed. And it's easier for them to succeed through legal means than it is through legal ways. And so those are the kind of things that I was talking about and trying to tackle. And I think some of these things are happening. Do I think it's happening enough? No, it's never enough until we get it all right. It's not fast enough. I think schools are not moving as fast in the right direction as they should. We know what it takes. We know what it takes, but we don't always give enough backing and support and financial support in order for that to happen. So lip service is one thing, but you have to put your money where your mouth is in order for some of these things to actually work.
All right. Yeah. I think education is so essential, and we see that is a big challenge in Washington, D.C. area,
Yes, indeed.
and especially in the low income areas, not in a high income areas,
Sure,
which
of
is,
course, of course, of
and
course,
it has the
always.
best schools in the world, actually, if you go to Northwest, and especially the private schools.
Yes.
So it is just
Yeah.
sort of, to say animally, I would say, like
Yeah.
within the neck, some kind of 20 miles radius, you have such a big contrast.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And it is just complex, like you said, it's just very difficult to start wrap your head around it, and I know that is why it's very difficult to generally solve these problems and run for these positions. But if anything, I think wise people like you with experience, and especially with business experience, would succeed at this if they chose to.
Well, thank you.
Well, mm, moving on to the next question. Um, uh, who is the most inspiring person for you, alive or dead? Hopefully,
Yeah.
someone would know, but if we don't know, that's okay as well. And why?
Uh, the most inspiring person for me as I was coming into this world of activism and civic engagement is two people actually, Howard Zinn and Ralph Nader. Howard Zinn, the historian who wrote People's History of the United States, someone I became friends with and really admired him greatly. He is one that is always hopeful, writes about history, and writes about history from perspective of ordinary people. He writes about the successes that ordinary people have achieved. Because I've always asked him, what makes you uh, so positive? What makes you so joyful? And he said, because I look at the successes that people have achieved despite all the obstacles they faced. And that's a really cool thing to do. Ralph Nader, of course, being the civic kind of consumer advocate, civic engagement guru of America, really oftentimes reminds us about the idea that in order for this democracy to succeed, everyone has to be involved. You can't just be sit on the sidelines. You have to be engaged and involved. And stop complaining. Make it, if you don't like it, fix it. Be part of the solution. Don't just complain. It's easy to complain. It's harder to fix. Those are two people that I find really, really exciting. And the the Sherpa that I went with when I went to Nepal was one of the wisest human beings I ever met, and really taught me so much about life, not just about the trek, but really along the way. I learned so much about how to take care of myself and how to stay focused and how to stay engaged and how to set goals and overcome them, overcome obstacles. It was really a very, very interesting experience that goes way beyond just walking.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure it was a very spiritual
yeah,
experience, and may have meant some kind of transformation for you as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And coming out of it, do you see any big goals that you like to share with us? I know people sometimes don't want to, share
Well,
their dreams
I
and
mean,
goals, but if there's anything specific.
I try not to put too many goals because goals sometimes get in the way of life, and I just want to keep things flexible and open. But one of my aspirations is I love writing, so I've been writing a lot, and I want to write a memoir. Not that my life is that important or that exciting to somebody, but I think writing in itself is is something really enjoyable. I love reading memoirs from people I don't know, not necessarily about what they accomplished, but really about just life in general. You learn so much about your own life when you're reading other people's lives. Learn about the obstacles they've overcome and the challenges they faced and where they are today, no matter who they are. So, yeah,
Wow.
except
I
with
think it
writing.
would be very interesting because you're not only sharing your own life, you're sharing a piece of DMV area's
Yeah,
development. So
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure it will be very, very
yeah,
interesting.
exactly.
And what is your favorite book?
Um, there's so many books that I enjoy. Lately, I'm reading a book called Bettyville, and it's about a young man who goes to take care of his ailing mother.
Hmm.
It's beautifully written. It's a memoir. One
Okay.
of my favorite books is The Alchemist. I've always read that. I've read it several times. It's a small book, easy to read. Um, uh, I love The Great Gatsby is one of my favorite books that I've read several times. It's rare that I read a book more than once. That's really when you read a book more than once, it means you really really enjoy it. So books I like fiction a lot. I enjoy fiction. I like memoirs,
Hmm.
um, and really interesting memoirs. Um, uh, there's a book that I read recently called How We Live Our Lives, and it's a great, again, a great memoir.
Hmm.
So books like that I've enjoyed immensely.
Yeah, I can see that it's about storytelling and knowing their
Absolutely,
lives, and
absolutely,
it's very unique to the business you're doing and to the person you are.
right.
So, since you've been in business, your own business, you're still developing new locations. You've tried to, you had the experience with the politics as well. In your opinion, what kind of impact has better ROI, let's say, to do activism, direct work, and just put your money into it, or invest into a business that could have that same impact, but maybe in a longer, slower pace? What is your opinion about these? Like,
Uh,
how do you invest in your life? Like, do you do investing in charities, or you try to do more impact through your business, or you can actually also fund certain candidate like yourself or some other person too? Like,
it's
what are
really
your
all
thoughts?
it's all of the above. Honestly,
Mhm.
it's I try not to go in one path or another. So I try to help others in achieving certain goals that I feel like they do it better than me. I try to constantly be able to build my business, make sure my business continues to stand for the values that it stands for, and make sure to take care of our employees. Um, I try to think in terms of, and I don't try to invest in other businesses just because I don't think that makes sense for me. This is if I want to invest in something, it's going to be this business that I'm in, to make sure that I leave it on strong foundation, and the people that are going to carry on the business beyond me are going to be able to, have a good footing to launch whatever the next phase would be. So that's really how I see it.
Right. And I think it's a follow-up question on investing in general. Um, what kind of criteria do you use? Obviously, when you invest in your own business, it's just that because it needed to be done, and that's where you're heading. But do you do any stocks or crypto at
Yeah,
all?
yeah. I do stocks, of course. Retirement funds and things like that. And oftentimes, in fact, my main criteria is not to invest in military anything. So making sure that my money isn't going to promote any kind of militarism or destruction of the earth or human beings. That's my criteria. And although right now that's the only thing that's making money these days, seems
Mm,
with the stock market, going down. That seems to be where the money is. Unfortunately, war continues to be a profitable enterprise that people continue to invest in it.
mhm. Well, now there's also a lot of tech
Yeah,
that is thriving and
yeah,
continued growing, maybe not as fast.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I definitely hear you there, and it's been a great lesson for all of us on how to start your business, how to invest the money with it, how to make an impact. And one more question, I think, is because you have family and you have other family members that were maybe able to help you with the business back in the day. I wonder how um, uh, someone who could use help with the family or involve their kids, what is your policy like for some entrepreneur who would think about involving their family? Uh, how to prepare them, how to
Well,
deal with all that. Like sometimes it's a bit of a sticky situation for a lot of people. And I think you have done a business for a long time. You would definitely have more of a good answer to this question.
I wish I had an answer to this question. I don't. Everybody's different. I know people that have family businesses that do really well together as a family. I have not been successful in that regard. I have 4 children, and I don't. I thought it's best if they don't get involved in the business, because what happens if you have a family that's involved in the business, your entire life becomes the business. So you can't really have a normal dinner, you can't have a normal holiday, you can't go on vacations together, because you're always thinking of the business and always talking. Your major conversation becomes the business. Now, other people may know how to do it better than me. I don't know. But for me, I tried it. I didn't like it. It didn't work out. And I have a much better relationship with my children now that they're not involved in my business than I did when they were involved in my business.
Mhm.
So that's
get it.
my
Keep it simple.
keep it simple.
Yep.
I know that, and when I sometimes I see like trucks going around saying, Joe and Sons, or blah blah blah, and it's always sons. I've never seen Joe and daughters, but anyway, that's beside the point.
Well, this
But
is America, I
yeah,
guess. Yes.
yeah, yeah. Who knows? But anyway, I just find it interesting that that when I see that, I think, oh, they were able to figure it out. I have not been able to figure it out, so I don't have good advice for somebody that wants to go into business with their family.
Mhm.
For me, I've stayed away from that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good sampling. I always ask this about this question to a lot of people who are either doing with family or they have an opportunity, especially husband and wife sometimes becomes a business partner, and some are doing it well where some others would complain and say you better stay away from that kind of enterprise.
Right.
So the answers vary.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed it. I think we have really discussed a lot of things that matter to you and to me. And I'm sure our audience will also love it and find it very useful for their development. Thank you
Indeed.
so
Thank you so
much.
much. My pleasure.
Mhm.
Take care.